I'm going to start with a different Buddhist story. So the usual trajectory of a Buddhist story, if you look to the really early texts, starting with the Buddha and then the Buddha's followers, the Buddha's followers came from all sorts of different walks of life, but quite common among them, and including himself, is those who come from well-to-do families and who become disillusioned with that life. They realise that all of the luxury that they've been brought up to enjoy, all of the status that they might have, and even the power, they realise that it's got nothing to do with real meaning and human value. And an encounter with the Buddha means that they leave home, renounce their wealth, renounce the wishes of their families, even like the marriage plans of their families, or in the Buddha's case, he snuck out of his palatial home at night and walked into the jungle, taking away his luxurious silken gown and swapping that with those of a beggar. So that's, and the symbol behind that story is I think it's the one of many religious traditions, that material wealth, status, the things that we find so compelling are like dust in our hands, really, when we really are looking for what the meaning of life is, what's actually of value. So that's the story that we usually get to know in the Buddhist tradition, the one that goes from riches to rags, the story of the renunciate. But we're in a different paradigm. We're in the cosmic world of the Mahayana, the White Lotus Sutra, where everything is technicolor, extravagant, and inverted even from our usual assumptions. So in this story that I'm going to relate, we're moving from the outer form of renunciation to looking what it's like to the splendour of inner riches, the splendour of spiritual wealth. So the story goes that the parable that we're looking at tonight, of which the Buddha related in his with his cosmic magical retinue around him. The story goes like this: there was a man who, when he was a young man, he left his father and he went wandering, and he worked in different places. He went to distant lands, and he worked hand to mouth, and he managed to scratch a living, but really subsistence. So he managed to work enough for a meal here and there. In between that was a lot of walking, looking for work. And he soon forgot very much about his past. He forgot a lot about his past and carried on. He got used to this way of life. It was a wretched way of life, a meagre way of life, but he got used to it. Meanwhile, his father missed his young son, the young man. His father was leading a really different kind of life. The father was a merchant, he was a trader, and he was a canny one. He's a good trader. He managed to accumulate wealth, and he did very well for himself. And he also, as a tradesman, as a merchant, he would travel to different countries and wandered around somewhat. Eventually, he settled in a new place, a new city, and he made his residence there, and he built a mansion and carried on doing business, conducting business. He became a man of that town. He became a citizen that people looked up to. And he always missed his son. He missed his son. There was a sadness in his heart, despite the accumulation of treasure and wealth around him. Apparently, he had a great many of jewels. He had lots of property. He had elephants even, and elephants are a sign of riches because they've got a big appetite, so they cost a lot. They cost a lot to keep. The son, travelling around for decades, eventually passed into the kingdom where his father was now living. But of course, he hadn't kept in touch with his father, so he had no idea. He walked into the city and he walked past a house, and in the forecourt of the house, he saw a man with great wealth sitting there and surrounded by a retinue, and people were petitioning him. He was obviously a man of influence, a man that people wanted things from. And the son had become afraid of this kind of man. He'd become afraid of powerful people. Powerful people could manipulate you. If you were in want, that was something to be avoided. They could manipulate you. They could even enslave you. So the son veers away from this courtly figure, and he doesn't recognize him as his own father. It's been many decades. His father's got different hair. They look different. So the son slinks off, not recognizing and fearing his father. The father catches a glimpse of his son in the distance, and it's unmistakable. It's unmistakable. That's his son. He knows it. So he sends his servants to say, look, go after that man quick. And he doesn't have time to explain. So the servants run after the man, and the man is terrified of these servants. He's being chased by the servants of a rich man. Why would that be? He's so scared that he falls into a faint. So that's what happens. The son is terrified of the rich man. The rich man, the merchant, wants a relationship with his son. And when he sees how terrified his son is, he says to the servants, obviously, just let him go, let him be. And he has to think, okay, I can't use the direct way to build a relationship with my son. I'm going to have to be tactful. He really loves his son. He really misses him. But he can see that his son has fallen on hard times, and that there's a great gulf between them. That his son is terrified of and doesn't feel able to engage with the way the rich man lives. So he instructs his servants to just casually offer the son some work. So they say, if you're looking for different servants, so he's not afraid. If you want a bit of money, we've got a big job for you to do. And there's a huge heap of dirt. It needs sifting through and it needs moving. And it's out the back of, it's just out the back of that mansion there. So the son says, "Yeah, I do actually need some work. I'll do that." So he starts clearing away the heap of dirt, the heap of rubbish, and eventually the sort of the people managing the son say, "Well, why don't you carry on doing it? You can have this little hut." So he has a straw hovel near the heap of dirt, in the line of sight of the mansion. And he carries on. It's a huge heap of dirt, and it's only him doing it. So it takes a few years. And so he carries on doing that. The rich man, he's not in disguise, but he sort of downplays his wealth. So he puts on his more scruffy clothes, and he goes and has a chat with the son. And the son obviously doesn't know he's talking to his father. And the rich man says, "Look, I need quite a few things done, including I'd like this dirt pile finished. Why don't you stay here? I'll give you a regular wage, decent wage, like a better than you'll get anywhere else, not extravagant. You'll never want for anything. Good hours, etc. Good pension, So the son, who's used to living very wretchedly, thinks he knows a good thing. He knows some good things. He doesn't know all the good things. He knows some good things. Yeah, this will suit me very well. So this carries on. And he starts doing more and more favours for the rich man. And actually he starts building trust, a bit of rapport with the rich man, and the rich man says, like, I really trust you. You're a better worker than the others. I'm your employer. You're a better worker than the others. I'm going to give you more and more responsibility. So during that, the son gets used to travelling in and out of the mansion. He has to sometimes enter this wealthy place, this extravagantly wealthy place, and he starts to do that with ease. His former terror of this power, the seat of power, starts to wear away. So he's in and out of the mansion, and the father, as I said, that decades have passed. The father's now getting quite old, and he thinks, I've got to accelerate this. So he speaks to his son, and he says, look, you've built up a lot of trust. I really, really trust you. I don't trust actually anyone else. I'd like you to be my steward and manage my affairs and start to manage some of my property, some of my wealth. So the son starts to do that. He takes on more and more responsibility. So he gets used to the wealth. He gets used to big responsibility, and accustomed to the way that his employer is living. So it's all going well. The father can tell that he hasn't actually now got very long to live at all. So he sees, and he's happy, the responsibility that his son is taking. He's happy that the ease with which he comes and goes from the mansion. He's happy with how astute he is with the figures and how undaunted he is in his negotiations around things. So, he's now sort of feeling more like my son. So the wealthy man gathers all the good citizens of that town. He gathers all of the people of influence, the gentry, people from far and wide, and he gathers his son, and he says, and he tells the whole story. He says, actually, this is my son. This is what has happened, and now I bequeath my whole estate, everything, all of the wealth that I've had, to my son. He is my true heir. So the son, by now, is no longer frightened of this kind of thing, and is actually surprised but overjoyed. He's able to, in a sort of dignified way, be heir to all of this wealth. Yeah, so that's the story. So how can this be a Buddhist story when it's so materialistic and about wealth and riches, and it's completely the opposite to the story of the Buddha? Yeah, and how are we possibly to relate to it? I think it's sometimes helpful to, when we're in the world of stories or image, to relate to them, like we're told to relate to dreams sometimes. So I've heard this, that if you have a dream, that you might be in the dream, but also there's all these characters and they're part of you too. So like if you have a dream about someone else, like what part of you do they represent? So we can think about this in the story. We've got two main characters. We've got the father and the son. And if they're both us, what do they represent? But before we do that, before we look at these two characters, I just want to say something about the shape of the story. So as Aditya Bandhu said, it's the story is called The Return Journey. So that's the shape, isn't it? We're probably used to that. There are many return journey stories. Often any kind of quest actually comes with a return home. I'm suddenly thinking of the Lord of the Ring, or the Hobbit, is it? Anyway, that they go off, and and these are classic stories, structures. They go off, they change, and they come back. They come back to the start. It's not quite like that kind of story, because the son's not really a hero. He when he appears, he's sort of like an anti-hero. He's the opposite. He's down on his luck. So in a way, it's a story about something that's been lost. He's lost the relationship with his father, and his father's lost the relationship with his son. what it makes me think of is or perhaps a story of separation even, which makes me think of a sense of incompleteness. So any kind of separation, we start to feel less, we feel like part of us has gone, anything that we're attached to. So it's a story of separation of something that really feels like it should be whole or complete or united. And when I think of it like that, well, I think actually that we were talking, Akasha Vidya was talking about the human predicament in one way, which is the burning house of like, there's something urgent we're meant to be doing and we're not paying attention to it. Another way to think about, well, just our human psyche is this sense of we're always looking for something to complete us. So in that way, that gives us a clue to the fact that we feel incomplete. I don't know if you relate to this. I mean, I certainly do relate to this very, very strongly, actually. And I remember as a teenager, sort of saying to my friends, like, I feel like I'm only half there or something. There's sort of like these big eyes looking around the world going, what is it that's going to complete me? How am I going to be fulfilled? And why do I feel so sort of unwhole? And maybe some of you really relate to that, and maybe some of you are sort of relate to the existential predicament in a slightly different way. But I think it's interesting to look like where do we look for completeness? And of course, the obvious answers are, well, in our lovers, or in security in a property, or buying a home, or our careers. And of course, all of those things can be fulfilling and enjoyable, but they can't, and in my experience, never have. Not that I've actually bought a house, but anyway. I mean, I used to really want a house, but I've just noticed how annoying it is maintaining a home, so I don't actually, that's always trouble, always trouble. Yeah. The things we want, either we don't get them, and so they can't complete us, or we do get them and they don't complete us. Or we feel satisfied for a while, and then that itch for something, that urge for something else, propels us to again look at the world wide-eyed, like what is it that I need, and we look in all sorts of different places. I think one of the reasons that we love animals so much, I profess to a fascination with baby elephant videos on YouTube. They're so sweet. But aren't animals just so interesting? And I think it's because they demonstrate, especially animals in the wild, they demonstrate the quality of completeness. They're not like, they don't have this kind of human quality of like, what am I going to do with my life? What's it all about? They're kind of whole unto themselves. When an animal is eating, they're eating. When they're sleeping, they're sleeping. When they're hunting, they're hunting. All of that actions are completely whole. And I think that's in some ways that's why we sort of look to the world of nature documentaries, and we're fascinated by creatures because of this like whole embodiedness, whereas we feel sort of fragmented. We've got this amazing intelligence, we've got imagination, we've got extraordinary qualities, but they're very uneven in us. They're sometimes there, and then sometimes we just let ourselves down. We're foolish. We communicate weirdly. All sorts of like it's just much, much more complicated being a human being than a baby elephant. So the answer isn't to diminish those qualities and become simple in that way, become less. And I think sometimes that's what Buddhism sort of looks like in the popular culture. Like this is all you need to do is be in the moment, yeah? And that's a bit like an animal. They're so in the moment, and isn't that beautiful? But that would mean sort of scratching out all of these faculties that we have. Abstraction, the ability to plan, the ability to have an ideal and create, and to follow our imagination, to empathise, do extraordinary things. So that we throw that idea out the window. We won't become animals. We need to grow into ourselves in some way. I think some of the signs of our unevenness, certainly I know this in myself, is convoluted thinking. So we've been, as those of you who've read the text in the Greater Mandala booklet, this is described, that our thinking capacity way outruns our emotional life, and they don't match up. So we sit and the ability to see into the future or predict. That sounds clairvoyant. All I mean is plan, really. It runs away with us, and it gets driven by a sort of neurotic emotion, uneven emotional life, if that makes sense. So this is a story. Yeah, this is a story about that feeling of separation, or that feeling of incompleteness, or that feeling of a lack of wholeness. And what do we do about it? Well, it's also a story. This story is a story about time, and it's also it's a story in time, and it's also a story out of time. So in time, this story, as it happens in time, the son, where the action starts, he's digging a pile of dirt, and we watch him grow. We watch him become more and more capable, more and more dignified, and more of a whole man. We watch him start to enjoy life, appreciate things more and more. At first, in the story, in time, the son is alienated from his family, from his father, and he can't recognise the splendour that is his own birthright. But he's wholesome enough to recognise a decent living situation. He's wholesome enough to see a good offer that's in his own language, which is the language of work and wages. He can see a good offer. So his mind is whole enough for that, and he takes it up. And that he's wholesome enough his mind is healthy enough to recognise that a steady wage and a better place to live are better than the hand-to-mouth existence that he's been having. And remember, always keep remembering with these stories, they are metaphors. They're very, very pared down. So they won't look in detail like our own lives, but we can use them metaphorically. And we use metaphors in Buddhism because that's the nature of the spiritual life. That's really the only way you can communicate. We can talk about concepts, but they're always metaphors in Buddhism. Even the clearest, most sort of plain concepts are metaphors, because we can't actually describe. We can't describe, for example, the enlightened mind. We can't describe it and pass it on to you in words. So we use metaphors. And so the metaphor is that the son is, for the son there is work to be done, and the work is shoveling dirt. Well, in the spiritual life, what's the work that needs to be done? We can ask ourselves. And the Buddhist path, well, there is a Buddhist path, and there's one of the best formulations, a very, very simple formulation that needs filling out and exploring in a lived way. But But a traditional formulation is the path of, it's called the threefold path, which I'm going to explain to you. So the threefold path is ethics, meditation, and wisdom. Just three things. We start practicing ethics, and if you want to know about Buddhist ethics, you can read the Refuges and Precepts. So 5 precepts are the most succinct way of describing the Buddhist ethical life. But what do those mean? Practicing ethics means acting with integrity. It means acting in line with our values. It means having values and being able to follow them through in different situations, even when under pressure. It means developing our conscience, becoming sensitive and able to apologise, for example, when we know that we've done wrong, rather than avoid the person and not want to look them in the eye. Practicing ethics means being in more and more communion with other people. We're taking in other people much, much more. We're concerned about the effect that we have on them. Ethics can sound sometimes a bit of a sort of dutiful word, but actually the actual living of them is much more than that. It's a freedom. It's a way of becoming more individual. It's one of those surprising paradoxes of the Buddhist life is that the more Buddhist discipline we apply, the more individual, more our own uniqueness comes out. It's like the practice of ethics, for example, frees us from the sort of reactive, habitual, unconscious way of relating that we might be used to. Yes, so this is part of ethics. It includes real communications, laying bare the complexities of our psyche, and by this we become more upright, more confident, and more trustworthy, and we become less and less compelled by the stories that we have that are propelled by greed and hatred. So that's ethics. We're developing a healthy mind. The next one, meditation or concentration. Much, much easier to sit with yourself, to sit in meditation when you've got a clear conscience. There's a beautiful Buddhist word called pramoja, which is the brightness of a mind with a clear conscience. With this more easeful mind, we're able to sit in meditation. We're able to look more confidently at our mind, look more directly. We're happy and more comfortable living in brighter mental states. We're not sort of habitually sliding down into previous negative mental states. I definitely have experienced this myself. I probably still am, but when I was younger, I was just very, very angsty person, and sort of felt completely, I sort of loved the idea of being melancholy, and sort of went around being melancholy. It's not that nice. And sort of anyway, that and I'm much less self-involved than I was, and it's just better, It's just easier. It's more comfortable, and it's nicer for other people as well. It's all very well deciding to be melancholy, but no one really wants to be around that person. So the part of the story that this represents is the sun coming and going with ease into the mansion. Yeah, so we're more able to freely enter brightly, better mental states more quickly, even when we're feeling a bit blue or like a bit thrown about by things. More quickly able to recover ourselves, more quickly able to work skillfully with our minds to think, okay, why is this happening? What do I need to do? And able to recognise more positive mental states for what they are, as being truer truer parts of our minds. I think one of the things that we can find so compelling about feeling blue is it feels really, really true, like, oh yeah, miserable, that's actually me. But it's not. The practice of samadhi, fueled by ethics, is a sort of blowing away of that idea of that's the real me. So we're much more able to recognise the nature of our mental states as being conditioned and less bothered about taking them personally. Even if we've had that same thought about ourselves 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, it doesn't make it truer just because we've had that thought many, many times. So we're much more able to see through that. And with this new quality of a brighter mind, a more easeful mind, a mind with integrity and trustworthiness, we're much more receptive to Buddhist wisdom. So this is the final part of the threefold path: prajna, wisdom, and this is a falling away from delusion. It can only happen with a mind that's flexible, that's made malleable by the flexibility of meditation. The Buddha talked about meditation as being like molten gold sometimes. The mind can be creative and create beautiful things. If our mind is entrenched in views about the world that are unhelpful, well, it's just entrenched in anything, then we're not receptive. Yeah? So prajna, wisdom, is not something that we can decide to have. It's not the kind of wisdom that you get from reading lots and lots of books, or even from living to a ripe old age and having lots of experience. It's a different kind of wisdom. It's a quality of mind that is unimaginable because it transcends the usual framework by which our mind operates. This is what the Buddha realized to the fullest degree, and is let's say, the birthright of all of us, the enlightened mind. What's Buddhist wisdom? What does it say? What does a Buddha say what does someone say about their realization? Well, it's that the sense of self we've created is a limited and cramped mode of existence. It's at the most, it's uneven with all the joys and sorrows of a human life, and without wisdom, we're relying on the good fortune of a very, very precarious situation, life, for our own well-being. Yeah. So without wisdom, we're relying on good luck, relying on being born in a society that's going to be stable and well. We're relying on people around us treating us well. We're relying on good health. We're relying on never getting old. Without wisdom, we're relying on unreliable things for our own well-being. Wisdom, Buddhist wisdom, is a realization. It's blazingly awake. It's completely emotionally positive. It's aware of everybody's, I don't want to sound omniscient, it's able to take in anybody who comes into contact with it, without defense, without a need for fear. It's a deep penetration of what what existence is like. The nature of Buddhist wisdom is hard to talk about. That's why we resort to symbols as well. I was thinking about an image that Coleridge has, the poet Coleridge, and he's talking about truth and justice, and he's got this lovely image of a caterpillar that in Coleridge's world, the caterpillar, like imagine a really fat green caterpillar, yeah? And one of those really big ones, and it's green, it's that vibrant green because it's been eating leaves, yeah? So that's in Coleridge's world. It's green because it's been eating leaves. And he says that human beings need to imbibe truth and justice in the same way that caterpillars eat leaves to turn them green, so that it's infusing our whole being. So we can think about that about in Buddhist practice. We practice so that it infuses our whole being. It infuses us from our toes to our head, our hearts. The deepest aspects of our unconscious mind become conscious. Everything is filled with awareness, infused. I want to take Coleridge's metaphor further, because of course a caterpillar doesn't stay a caterpillar. It becomes a chrysalis, and then it becomes a butterfly, which is nothing like a caterpillar. Nothing like a caterpillar. It's amazing. And this is what Buddhist wisdom is like. Our mind, the enlightened mind, is nothing like a previous mind. It is like it's a whole new state. A butterfly can fly, and it's arrayed with colours, and they shimmer, and they're metallic, and they're gorgeous. And a caterpillar, cute as they are, just like plods along the ground. And I sometimes think there was a children's story about this, about that somewhere in the caterpillar, it might just know that somehow, if it just keeps eating these leaves, that something extraordinary may happen. It might, it wouldn't know in a very knowing way, but do you know what I mean? Like somewhere in us, there's a sort of knowing that maybe, a sort of very, very hopeful knowing that maybe we could be something more. Because without that, we wouldn't feel incomplete. We'd just feel like, this is it. It's a bit rubbish, but I'll get on with it. It's okay sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So that sense of incompleteness, it must be something. It must be more than just greed. It's a sort of drive that knows that there's something that we could be, something that could fulfill us, something that we could transform into. So let's look again at the relationship between these two characters. The son, we think of, when we think of it being us. Okay, sorry, I just have to be a bit more flexible in my thinking. Well, much of the reflections that I'm having from this talk are from our teacher, Sangharakshita, and this is how he talks about it, the sun, the image of the sun. When we are the sun, he's in this state of forgetting. He's forgotten his father. He's forgotten where he came from. He's forgotten that he has got even roots. And in a way, we're a bit like that. We've sort of forgotten certain things. And I really, really don't mean this literally, in that we used to be something, or like humankind used to be something, and we've fallen. It's not that kind of myth. But there's this quality of unawareness. And I see it in my day-to-day life, just on a very simple level. Like a lot of my actions are not conscious. There's a sort of forgetting what I'm doing. And I don't just mean that because I'm scatty, but that so many of our actions come from habit, and we sort of do them and think, well, why do I always do that? They're reactive. They're not sorted out. They're not in line with our values, for example. They're not. We don't quite know why we do them. They're just picked up from the people around us. So we're probably more lapsed in that way than we realise, compared to what a Buddha would experience. We've sort of a kind of lapsed awareness, sort of getting by, doing some things, doing the next thing, following the next thing, propelled by habit. Let's move to the Father. Well, what if the Father is also us? Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? Perhaps this is the kind of self that never forgets his Son. Yeah, so he's always got a longing for his Son, always wants his Son to fulfill his birthright. And let's not get too worried about masculine or feminine. If it works as mother, then fine too. But the Father in the story is always aware, completely conscious. And we can think of that as perhaps like a higher self. And again, metaphorically, this is our higher self that wants everything the best for our lower self. They're always in relationship, whether the lower self, the Son version of ourselves, knows it or not. Yeah? So that kind of awareness, we sometimes get glimpses of it in meditation. We might do. It might propel us along occasionally, and then we become alienated from it again. We forget. The modern world trains us in forgetting, but it's an old story, that forgetting. I'm interested where this isn't merely metaphorical. I think that there is a kind of awareness that is more of a mystical order. I remember reading about near-death experiences, and somebody had a near-death experience, and a child had seen played out in their mind. I think it was in a garden or something like that. Sunlight was part of it, an aunt or something. And in that scene, the memory was so precise that he said, relating this near-death experience, it was so precise he could have counted the amount of midges in the air. And so that there is a kind of awareness that every moment is completely as it's sort of exquisitely, precisely taken in like that. We might get glimpses of it in dreams. Sometimes I get a dream from my past that my conscious mind has no idea of, but it's like so precise and sort of beautifully, radiantly aware. So this higher self, the Father, is aware. He's not afraid of this blazing kind of awareness. He's not afraid of his own love for his Son, and he's not afraid of the spiritual wealth, the riches, his pleasure, his elephants, his lovely house, his silks represent. So that's the story in time. The story out of time is that the past is no nearer to enlightenment than the present or the future. So as practitioners, it's very useful to think, okay, I'm going to work towards improve. I'm going to work with ethics. I'm going to work on my meditation. I'm going to reflect so that wisdom, I get glimpses of wisdom, and that becomes more and more the mansion that I inhabit. But the mystical, cosmic side of things, I don't know how else to put it, there's probably better ways to talk about it, is that the past is no nearer to enlightenment than the present of the future, or the future. If we're a caterpillar, there's always the possibility of the butterfly. It's inherent within our green, juicy bodies. So this isn't an origin story. It's a story. It's not a story about how to atone for past error. It's not really a story of how we go in time back to our start. By all means, it's a story of growth. But also the story helps us to not take time literally. So apparently the philosophers and the mystics tell us that time and space are mental constructs, and they're useful ones. But actually there's something outside of time, which is that there's always potential for enlightenment. Buddhahood is enmeshed in the fabric of the universe. It's always there. There's always It's an innate aspect of the universe. It's the part of existence, that the patterning of existence, that means humans can become Buddhas. Our teacher says to make that happen, we need to take a crosswise leap out of the well-worn ruts of our usual mental constructs, our usual constructed self. We need to make a transcendental leap, and we can only do that by following the path in time of ethics, meditation, wisdom. Yeah. So we can take the story psychologically about integration and wholeness, which is very useful, but it's also about a great transcendence, a great, as Bhante says, a crosswise leap into a different framework where self-identity is no longer important. The Buddha talked about the sense of self as being like a house. A house is always an interesting metaphor. I'm sure you can think about that more. And this great leap is not just for a few gifted people, it's for everybody who wants to follow the path of meaning, who wants to follow the Buddhist path. It's our birthright, and it's what we've always been all along if we only knew it. It's magnificent, it's abundant. The riches are found through our own efforts, our own graft, but there's a sense of the universe wanting it to happen. The Father there is longing for our growth, is longing for us to make that crosswise leap into our, so that we become heirs to our spiritual wealth.